Hello and welcome to another episode of Just Onside. And thankfully, the international break is over. So we can look forward to some Premier League football and Championship football as well. We play Norwich tomorrow. Daniel Fort returns to Carrow Road. So very exciting as a Leeds fan. But this is a Premier League show. So it's best to talk about Premier League stuff. OS, how are you?
You say it's a Premier League show, you, but our viewers know that normally when it's the normal regular league fixtures, I allow you a few minutes. I say I allow you.
Rightly so, rightly so.
Rightly
It would be rude not to.
Rude not to. So tell us a little bit. So what time's the game? Or what position are Norwich, by the way?
Norwich, I think they're just outside the top six.
Okay, so it's both teams kind of jostling for position, right?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Top end. How do you see it quickly?
It's obviously it's an interesting story. Daniel Fort returning to a team that he's got up twice into the Premier League. We've got a couple of players back, Willie Gnonto's back, so it strengthens our team. On paper, looking at our squad, I'd expect us to win, even though it's an away fixture. But you never know. The Championship is a tricky league. A lot of teams can beat each other, whether they're at the bottom, whether they're at the top. But I would expect us to get a positive result. Famous last words.
Famous last words. Next time we see you or hear from you, it'll be on Twitter after the game, no doubt. So
during the game as well. If we're losing, it's during the game as well.
Yeah, let's see. Well, good luck anyway. But yeah, no, I'm doing good. Thank you very much. Good to have the Premier League fixtures back after a couple of weeks off with the international. England played obviously Australia. They had the friendly against. Yeah, it was Australia, wasn't it? Last
Australia,
Friday, yeah. Which they got away with a narrow win, and then confirmed their progress to the European Championships next summer in Germany. So that's that done. I think there's another international break in 4 weeks. I'm sure there's one in November. So no doubt you'll be mourning again soon enough, AYub.
I will be. I absolutely. I won't sort of say I detest international breaks, but they're not my favourite thing which interrupts a season. But glad to see you're doing well. I would sort of say I'm doing well, but those of our viewers who are in the UK, which is all of them really, I think, apart from Dennis, the weather is wild, which accounts for this. The scarf that I've got on because I'm quite mean. I've not put the heating on. It's the good lady. It's the good lady. She's not put the heating on, so I've got the scarf on, so I'm nice and snug. And hopefully we'll have some good hot topics to warm us up. So the weekend is looking reasonably exciting. We've got some mouth-watering fixtures, and none more so than the game at I think it's at the Bridge, isn't it? It's Chelsea Arsenal. So that's a juicy affair. As an Arsenal supporter, OS, are you looking forward to it?
Yeah, well, I think Arsenal having it's interesting we speak about the international break. I think when you end or go into the international break with a big win, Arsenal's biggest win for quite a number of years in some ways, given they obviously challenged Manchester City for the Premier League last year. So to go into the international break off the back of that, I think Arsenal probably wouldn't, or Arsenal fans wouldn't be complaining about the 2-week break, because not only do they go into it with a lot of optimism and hope, but also I think it allows some of their key players just to rest, recover, and for some returning players to get some time under their belts. Notably, obviously, Bukayo Saka, who missed that game against Manchester City, he reported for England duty to be just confirmed for the fact that he needed time to recover, so he would have returned back to Arsenal. So I think that time off, I think for a player like that who's played a lot of football for club and country over the last 18, 24 months. So I think that 3-week break, essentially, which is what it is, 3-week break. Yeah, it depends, 2.5, because I think he got taken off injured, didn't he, in that Champions League game. So I think that will do him the world of good. I think they also sent a physio to the with Thomas Partey, who played a little bit of game time with Ghana as well with his national team. So again, going into the back of it on a big win, with some of the players getting some key minutes as well, I think will do Arsenal a lot of good. I think in terms of the game itself, but I don't know what your thoughts. So I think in some ways it's perhaps a bigger game. I say big game, they're all big games, right? Are you in the Premier League? 38 games you get, no one game is bigger than the other. They're all worth 3 points, and you've got to show that consistency and and desperation, game in, game out, to put that run together, right? That's how you win leagues. That's how you achieve the big trophies. But I think in terms of just storylines, I'd say perhaps it's one more interesting for Chelsea. I think they've had a little bit of a resurgence recently off the back of 3 wins in all competitions, the 2 league games being against Fulham and Burnley, both deserved wins. I watched quite a bit of the Fulham game at Craven Cottage, and they were deserved winners. The game should have been pretty much done and dusted. It was at half time, but they were really good for that 2-0 win, I would say. And then obviously the big win, and I'm talking strictly for the league, away to Burnley. Now, Burnley have had their challenges so far this season, but obviously Chelsea, any away win in the Premier League is worth celebrating. So they'll come into it with a bit of optimism, and Opta has it that Chelsea have had the 3rd easiest set of fixtures. I mean, read into that what you will. I think the key, if you look at some of the underlying stats that you for Chelsea, they've improved in all those kind of second level stats. They're massively improved from last year. The one statistic that is still where they struggle, I think, where last year they were the most profligate team in terms of expected goals. This year they are the 2nd worst. So that's still an issue, which I think Everton are number 1 in that regard in terms of kind of expected goals and what have you. So I think that's the only, for those Chelsea fans of which your son is one, I think that's going to be the issue for them in terms of achieving their hopes and expectations. Big players like Enzo Fernandez playing really well. Obviously, Pochettino sees him as a number 8, but again, no goals in 26 Premier League games in his Chelsea career. He's only got a couple of assists. Not to say that should be his game, but you're obviously wanting a little bit more from a player you've bought for a significant chunk of change. So I think they've started to sort of show some good signs. Sterling obviously having an incredible start to the season. You'd think if this form continues for Raheem Sterling, he will find his way back into that Euro squad. For Gareth Southgate, you would imagine he's been, for the most part this season, unplayable. I know he's made some changes to his diet and what have you to kind of stave off injury troubles, but he's really been incredible for Chelsea and their best player this year. So I think they've started to find some formula, some relationships on the pitch. He's testing that middle trio out currently with Gallagher, Enzo ahead of Caicedo. So it'll be a big test for Arsenal, obviously tomorrow evening live on Sky Sports. But again, I think from a Chelsea perspective, the key thing is obviously being kind of converting those chances. And normally against Arsenal, they've struggled against them recently. Chelsea have. I think Arsenal have won their last 3 trips, or have won on their last 3 trips to the bridge. So Arsenal will go into the game with a great deal of confidence. It'll be interesting to see how they match up against that Chelsea midfielder, AYub. I think I suggested that in maybe some of the games, he may go in with this kind of Declan Rice, Partey, Saliba, Gabriel kind of box at the back to really bring some physicality. Especially, I always think, and I don't know if you think this is a legitimate point, but I always feel going into the winter months, elements like that become quite important, just in terms of that kind of physicality that you need to kind of get through that winter period. So I'm interested to see if they kind of match up. I think it'll be a relatively cagey affair in terms of neither team really wanting to risk too much. I think both teams probably would take a point, AYub, in my opinion. I think Chelsea are on the up. They've got tough fixtures to come, of course, this obviously being one of them. But from a Chelsea perspective, it's a big litmus test. I think from an Arsenal perspective, I think it gives them another opportunity, doesn't it, AYub? I mean, they've beaten both Manchester clubs. They drew at Spurs, so they've navigated kind of or got 7 points out of the 9, which they would have taken before the start of the season. Obviously, they'll be disappointed with that home draw against Fulham, but 6 wins, 2 draws, joint top of the table with their North London rivals. I think this is another test, and if they come through and get 3 more points, which they are capable of, which they obviously did last year, based on that Gabriel goal. If you remember when Saka crossed it in from the corner, kind of went directly in, but Gabriel finished it off just on the line. Deserved win. If they get another win, I think that'll be a real indicator, because I think most teams can see, I think most observers can see that this Chelsea team just started to turn a little corner now. So big game for Arsenal, big game for Chelsea. It's probably the highlight of the weekend perhaps along with the other game at the Etihad this week. But yeah, I'm interested to see how Arsenal fare, and I'm hopeful that they'll show the same level of kind of concentration and desperation that they showed in that kind of highly charged affair at the Emirates against the champions a couple of Sundays ago.
You hit the nail on the head. I think you just said right at the end that Chelsea appear to have turned a corner. I think at the start it was it was stuttering. I think they had moments where they were playing well. Plus, if you look at the data, it's not as if they've been playing poorly. It's just maybe I suppose they've not been as potent as they should be. But certainly the last two results are positive. They've won, I think, the cup game as well, so it's 3 wins on the bounce. And maybe they're probably happy that they're playing playing Arsenal now. I think maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, or prior to the international break, and before they had that nice little run of 3 wins, they may have been a little bit worried. But I think now, and you used the word litmus test, absolutely. I think this is for Chelsea a real. It's for Pochettino to see exactly where they stand at this moment in time, and it could be. I mean, it could be a defining moment for Chelsea if they get a positive result. It could be the springboard. They've already got a couple of league wins, so I think the confidence is there. The pieces are gelling. Sterling, you're right. He's been outstanding, but I think there are other players now as well. They're getting familiar with each other. It's a new manager as well, so there's a lot of moving parts that obviously need to align, and I think they're beginning to align. Tomorrow is a massive game. I'm looking forward to it, and I think Arsenal have been outstanding. I think they've been really, really good this season. You'd have to say Arsenal are the favourites. I think they've got form. They were close last season, but it's certainly not a walk in the park. I think this will be probably the toughest test for Arsenal this season. There's a part of me that actually would sort of say that if I was a betting man, I'd put a few quid on Chelsea, because I just think that it's the stars seem to have aligned. I think Pochettino perhaps is able to transmit his message. I think the players are getting familiar with each other. There's a little bit of confidence now with the results. It's going to be an exciting game. It's going to be a game that I can't wait. I think it certainly is the standout fixture, but my head sort of says that it's going to be Arsenal perhaps victorious, purely based on form, not just over the last few weeks, but just over the last 12 months or so. But I've just got a feeling that Chelsea will be perhaps looking forward to the game and perhaps quietly optimistic that maybe we've just had a nice bit of form. Players are playing together pretty well. We understand each other now, so maybe we can show Arsenal what we're all about.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the Chelsea approach, Chelsea won't mind Arsenal having a fair bit of the ball, and I think Chelsea, with the pace that they have in behind, it'll be interesting if they go in with this kind of 3-5-2 or what have you, with Sterling just in behind Jackson, you would think. But I think that will suit Chelsea. I think they don't mind that type of game because Sterling has definitely found another gear from somewhere this season. He's been incredible, and I think that's perhaps how you can best get at this Arsenal back line. The challenge you have is that when Arsenal flood that midfield, they've got players who are incredibly proficient at keeping the ball. So they're very kind of Arsenal's modus operandi away from home generally is to control the game. So they knock it around. Plenty of players in between. Even Gabriel Jesus will kind of drop in. It'll be interesting to see how they set up top. But Arsenal tend to play very, against the big teams, kind of risk averse, very controlled, very methodical, really grinding the team down over and what have you. Now, obviously, you would think that they've got a fully refreshed Bukayo Saka. Martinelli obviously came on against Manchester City and made the difference. So they'll have their first choice wingers available, you would think, unless there's any nasty surprises. That would perhaps mean that you would expect maybe Jesus to move back up front. It'd be interesting to see if he opts in another direction. But like I said, I expect Rice or Jorginho or one of Partey to play alongside Rice tomorrow, just because I think in the big games, we always say you try not to lose the game and then he can see if he can over time just exert it, maybe with some extra options off the bench. So it'll be a really fascinating game. I think Chelsea, again, won't mind. I think playing, if you remember, one of their better performances early on was obviously that first game of the season against Liverpool. After that, a difficult 20-30 minutes, they were, I thought, the better team for the last 60. They had strong spells against West Ham, even though they lost. And I think most general consensus this year, to your point about those moving parts, AYub, self-inflicted moving parts, some would say, is that the consensus is that Chelsea should get better as the season wears on. I think that will be true. I think just over time, you can't have Fernandes, Caicedo, and the players that they have and not expect over time. I mean, that's got the ingredients of a fantastic central midfield if they can just, and it takes time. It just takes a little bit of time, manages to get his ideas across. So I think it's a big one. One final point. I think what a win would do either way. If Chelsea win, they'll feel like, right, those kind of top four hopes, and they can really kick on. That'll be their big get, probably their best result in over a year or so. I'm just trying to think in terms of a real quality result that they've been able to clutch onto and say, right, this is a sign of progress and what have you. They've not had any of those for a long time. Or you would say, and from an Arsenal perspective, if they can get a win, I think they'll then a lot of supporters, a lot of football observers will say, I think they can really kick on this season and challenge for the Premier League title again. So a lot on the line, I would say, a lot on the line.
Absolutely. And you're right. I think in terms of confidence levels, Arsenal should be sky high after the last result. And it just was, I mean, it was, we talked about it at the time when we did the review of the game. I enjoyed it. I know it wasn't a spectacle in terms of football and pleasing to the eye and great movement, passing, all that kind of stuff. But in terms of the way that the Arsenal worked, the cohesiveness, the togetherness, and it was outstanding. I really was impressed by how much they wanted that, and I think that's a monkey off their back. I think that obviously you quoted the stats of how rare a win against Manchester City is. So certainly that's going to give them tremendous amounts of optimism and belief. And really, I think tomorrow I think they'll be bitterly disappointed, even though it's at the Bridge, if they don't win the game, because I think after beating Manchester City, I think they'll be cock-a-hoop. They'll be thinking, right, well, if we can beat City, then really there's nobody else that we should be fearing.
Agreed. And I think the only thing about the City result is, if you remember, I spoke about it, the result was one that they perhaps earned through the application that they put in the game, and it's that desperation, application, commitment where and we throw it around commitment. What is it? But you could see it. It was as though they didn't want to be opened up by anything, so they were really committed to doubling up, making sure those kind of middle areas were all blocked off and what have you. It was a commitment to say, and I use this phrase, not today. And they got a little bit of luck at the end. And what normally can happen and I don't think it will under Mikel Arteta, but again, players can start to think, well, if we've beaten City, everybody else is a step down from there on. And fair, that's true. But in the Premier League, and this is what I love about this league, you have to earn it every single time, every single week. You have to go out there and earn it through concentration, focus, not taking any chances, not taking risks, not doing things because you think, oh, it's only Everton or it's only Brentford or what have you. And I think that's why in some ways I like the fact that perhaps it's another big game, because the antennas will be up. In this league, AYub, it's just your concentration levels, your commitment to achieve a Premier League title tilt is you can't take any shortcuts, not against this incredible Man City team and other teams there at the top. Honestly, I really think the standards are so high now. Every single game, you've literally got to be on it. You can't have any compromise on your standards. That's the journey that Arsenal are going through. Currently, they're showing signs that there's definitely progress and evolution in that journey. But again, another big test. I wouldn't say a defeat. I won't read too much into a defeat the same way I wouldn't read too much into the victory against Man City. What they need to show is that they can go there and again be hard to beat. And if you're hard to beat, that's already a job halfway. So good game, big game, just before the Sheffield United game as well. So double header for Sky Sports. But yeah, it should be a fascinating game and the game of the weekend, you would say.
Without shadow of a doubt. In fact, it's going to be a fantastic Saturday. I'll be up. Well, I won't sort of say early because the England cricket game is at 9:30. We've got a midday Merseyside derby, and then obviously we've got the evening games plus a massive rugby game as well.
Massive. Yeah.
Huge rugby game, and apparently there's a UFC bout as well. But you know me, I'm not a violent man. I'm a lover, not a fighter. So I won't be watching that.
Indeed, it's a big card in Abu Dhabi in the early hours of Sunday, Ayub. So you may want to get up for the main event and the co-main event.
No, I ain't watching that nonsense. So that's a mouth-watering tie. But there's another game I'm going to talk about, OS, and there's an interesting subplot. Bournemouth Wolves. You were very passionate about Gary O'Neill getting the chop, and I was the reverse. I was saying that Iraola is the next best thing. It's a fantastic decision. Do
I feel another apology coming on you?
Yeah, at the moment, it seems like yet another error of judgment on my part. But what do you think? I want to talk more about Gary O'Neill. What do you think his mindset is going to be? Because he must have been bitterly disappointed, probably angry with what happened. So what do you think his mindset is going to be when Wolves visit Bournemouth?
I'd say two things. One is that you would think that the normal human reaction would be that he would be quite disappointed. It was, let's be honest, it's not happened many times, right? That kind of sacking. And what I mean is the one where you kind of achieve your objective. Now, you always talk about it, Ayub. If you remember one of our earliest podcasts, you said, this idea of kind of being public with your aims and objectives at the start of the season. I remember you commenting on that. And let's say if Bournemouth said at the start of the season, when they were under Scott Parker's stewardship, that their objective was to stay in the Premier League. Of course it was. That was their only objective, right? And after a few games with Scott Parker, they thought that they were better served under a different manager. And they obviously opted for Gary O'Neill, who I think acquitted himself well after being caretaker. So they gave him the permanent gig. He then keeps them up. So you think, right, okay, I've met my KPI, I've met my objective, and Bournemouth rewarded him with sacking him. So it was one of those kind of, hang on, what's going on? So the normal reaction would be, you'd think, to your point, you'd be quite disappointed, quite angry, and incredibly motivated to get a result. And I believe the game's tomorrow, so to get a big result for his team. He obviously was valued enough to be picked up by another Premier League team. Obviously, Wolves had their own issues with Lopetegui at the start of the season, so he'll be motivated. The cynic, however, in me sometimes thinks, well, and maybe perhaps this was in part of your thinking and part of maybe Bournemouth's thinking and maybe rash at the time, is, kind of Gary O'Neill thinking, well, my stock's quite high at the moment, and maybe it would be difficult to keep Bournemouth back in the Premier League or keep them up in the Premier League for 2 successive years, and maybe he gets out whilst his stock's still quite high, so I don't think the sacking did him any harm. Clearly it didn't, because he landed another gig in the Premier League. But I think it would leave a bitter taste in your mouth, right? I mean, he's obviously got links there. I believe he did play there as well, so I'd have to double check that. But in the end, he's been part of the English game for quite some time. If you look at his career, a workman-like player. I think he used to play for Portsmouth for a significant period of time as well. But in the end, I think from a managerial perspective, you'd say early doors, he's shown some good signs as a young up and coming manager. And look, at that point and at that level, when you're managing teams like Bournemouth, and this is the only gripe perhaps I had with you, is that I think teams sometimes are too quick to kind of evolve that process into, we don't want to just be a stay-up kind of team. We want to establish ourselves in mid-table. And I just think there are some clubs that, not saying they can't be that type of club. You've always got to have hopes, ambitions, and push ahead and push on. But you've also sometimes got to understand the reality and not try and fast-track that process. That was the concern I had. I think Bournemouth are trying to fast-track as though, well, we don't want to be in a fight again for relegation. Whereas I think Bournemouth are the kind of team that always will flirt with relegation just because of the sheer competition. I'm not saying they can't be a better team, just saying, that's normally the lot when you think about Bournemouth, like a Norwich, in terms of that kind of team that's gone up, gone down. Fulham, I guess, would be a team that's now established, but they also need to be wary because they've had a few shaky results this year. So in the end, before handing it back to yourself, I think Gary O'Neill will be motivated. I think he's just trying to do a good job for Wolves. He's got his hands full. Wolves will also be perhaps fighting relegation. I think the big thing for him is he's got a couple of critical players fit, healthy, And if he can also get his team scoring the amount of goals that they should based on their chance creation, I think they will be fine. I think if I remember correctly, you kind of had that last spot, according to yourself, between Bournemouth and Everton, was it? I think it was. Yeah, Everton. So yeah, that's my view on Gary O'Neill. But yeah, I think he was incredibly hard done by. You ultimately keep the team up. That was your objective, and they sack you. I think that's pretty unfair.
Very fair, very fair. From a game point of view, it's a massive game. Again, I mean, I sort of seen as Leeds were always towards the bottom, or at least for the last 2 seasons. It's a part of the league that I'm always interested in. The dogfight at the bottom. It's a massive game purely because I think. I mean, I did say that the way things have panned out so far, it was sort of Bournemouth and Everton. Wolves, I think, if they win tomorrow, they'll be safe. The reason why I say that is, and there's a rationale behind that, and I used to always use that when we were at the bottom, because for a team at the bottom, getting points is an extremely difficult thing in the Premier League. You've alluded to it when you were talking about Chelsea and Arsenal. This is a tough league, the best league in the world, one of the hardest leagues in the world, and the gulf between the Championship and the Premier League is huge. Sometimes to get maybe 8 or 9 points, if you're at the bottom, takes you about 12 or 13 games. And that's the way that I look at it. I'm not sure exactly what the difference between Bournemouth and Wolves is at the moment, but if Wolves win, it is a 6 pointer. So obviously the gap increases further. So certainly from a Wolves point of view, they'll probably turn around and say, well, look, Luton and Sheffield United are gone. It's that one space. And
Luton are still currently outside of the relegation zone
at the moment. I know, but come the end of the season, it will be my words will be quite prophetic. I'm pretty certain that they will be down, and Sheffield United are certainly down, and that's why it's so important for Bournemouth, because if they don't get a result, it just creates, I suppose, a gap between Wolves. So Wolves almost will think, well, for Bournemouth to catch us, it will take them 8, 9 games. And that's the way it is. It really is. It's strange. In the Championship, 7, 8 points is nothing. In the Premier League, it's massive if you're at the bottom. In terms of the subplot, in terms of Gary O'Neill, Iriola, I was obviously of the school of thought that Bournemouth did the right thing. There's a part of me doesn't believe.
You can't even get the words out.
I still believe that it was the right thing, but I think you've really argued it really well about maybe sometimes you don't want to punch above your weight. You want to maybe understand which lane you should be in and maybe stay in that lane. I think what it appears now that maybe Bournemouth got carried away and they've started having illusions of grandeur. This guy came with a tremendous rap. I mean, it was a manager that we were desperately trying to attract to Leeds, but he was thinking that this club is going to get relegated. Plus, he had some sort of maybe clause. Well, he was right, yeah, and also
it's the only thing he's got right over the last few months. To be fair, but...
Damn you, yeah. So maybe he was right, but he needs to. I mean, this is not a league where you don't have much time to learn. You've almost got to hit the ground running. Bournemouth haven't played fantastically well. I mean, they've got some decent players, but a lot of teams in the Premier League have got decent players. So I think Gary O'Neill has been fantastic. You are absolutely right. I reserved judgment in terms of what I thought Gary O'Neill was in terms of manager. I think he's done a really good job at Wolves so far. They've been unlucky, desperately unlucky with some results where they've played really, really well. If the performances are consistent enough, which I think this season they've been okay. I think they've had some outstanding performances, maybe not the results, but they've done enough to convince me that they will be safe. Gary O'Neill has shown me that he is a damn good coach. And I think...
So were you wrong, are you?
Wait until the end of the season. let's not get too carried away.
I like how you're hedging your bets. Firstly, you said Wolves will be safe. Secondly, you say it'll be between Bournemouth and Everton. So you're already suggesting that Gary O'Neil is going to do better with Wolves than Anthony Iraola is going to do with Bournemouth. So I'm not sure. I mean, they say sorry seems to be the hardest word, but clearly in your
that page has been removed in the dictionary I look at. So, but so far, thus far, I mean, it's difficult to make an argument for Iraola at the moment, or Bournemouth forcing O'Neill out and bringing Iraola. I mean, let's see what happens tomorrow.
Yeah.
If certainly Bournemouth don't get the result and Wolves get the result, then obviously the Bournemouth fans, I won't sort of say they're going to turn, but certainly they'll start thinking as well that hang on, what did our club do? Did we get rid of the better manager, the better coach, or at least a coach who understands the Premier League? So it's going to be interesting. It's a game that I'm looking forward. Go on, OS.
No, I was just going to say, I know why you sided with the decision to sack Gary O'Neil and go forward with Anthony Iraola. It's because you've said many, many times that after that first season when Leeds got back up into the Premier League and finished 8th, one of your biggest regrets is that your club didn't necessarily kick on in terms of investment and establish themselves in the Premier League. So I think just because of the kind of sheer frustration of what Leeds did, or should I say didn't do there afterwards, I think rankles with you. So I kind of understand in a sense. I just think I think you want to be careful if you're Bournemouth and you want to operate in that way. Listen, the owners own the club. You can do what you want. I say that often about the Glazers, right? If you own something, you have the right to do with it as you wish. But I think it's a decision that they'll hope they don't regret, to your point. And I'm not saying that it's not even the case that I'm seeing if Wolves finish above. I'm not that stupid. What I'm saying is sometimes a manager who knows your club, being there part of it, in terms of kind of understands that and what have you. I think it's a step forward. I think to your point, I think owners do look out for results and do look out for other teams and seeing that it's still, I think if at any point Bournemouth feel like they're getting cut adrift, I think the manager's then going to come under pressure. So he needs a result.
And I'm just looking at the table at the moment. Bournemouth have got 3 points second from bottom. Wolves have got 8 points. So if they do get the result, as I said, that's 8 points, and in the bottom 8 points is many games. So looking forward to it. Really looking forward to it. As I said, I'm the action always is, or the headlines are always at the top of the table, but I always am fascinated by what happens at the bottom. Okay, so that's Bournemouth and Wolves. Any other games that are catching your eye for the weekend?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's good to have Premier League football back, and there are some interesting subplots, aren't there? I think lunchtime tomorrow, I'm just going to quickly go through a few. You give me your thoughts as well. Merseyside derby, always an interesting affair. Should be kind of fiercely contested. I think because it's at Anfield, I do expect Everton just to sit in and just make it very frustrating. A typical Sean Dyche performance in terms of away to one of the big boys, let's say. So I think Liverpool should get back up and running. They've obviously had a couple of difficult results. Obviously, they'll feel very hard done by the result against Spurs, and then obviously when you come back to lead away to Brighton, yes, Brighton are a very good team, and we'll come on to that. But I think just the fact that they let some of that kind of momentum go. Obviously, you had some issues with Andy Robertson's defending for that second goal, but they'll feel as though I think Brighton on the whole did deserve the point in the end. But again, I think Liverpool's biggest issue is just that balance, right? In the middle of the park, just that protection in front of the back four. They've obviously got Trent Alexander-Arnold back, but Robertson's now going to miss some time with that shoulder injury that he incurred during duty playing for Scotland. So I think Liverpool should have too much for Everton. It's obviously one of the fixtures of the Premier League any season. To be fair, home and away, it's a game that's normally always obviously televised as it is tomorrow. So interesting game, big game. I think Liverpool will want to get back to winning ways. Everton have had a few decent results after that difficult home loss against your beloved Luton. So I think it should be a big one. What are your thoughts on that game, AYub? I fancy Liverpool to come through. I don't think they'll necessarily thrash Everton post international duty. Liverpool fans have a lot of gripes about the fact that they're always scheduled for the 12:30 kickoff after
Yeah.
international breaks, and that might be a legitimate one when you see the amount of times they've been put into that kind of fixture slot. I know there's some discussions going on about payments being made to police to try and televise games later on, and 3 p.m. blackouts perhaps going to be ended, and all the rest of it, which I'm sure we'll cover in good time. But on the fixture itself, AYub, what do you think, Liverpool, Everton?
It's an important one. You're right. Absolutely. The last two results have not gone their way. The Spurs one, it's still, I must confess, I mean, it's a good few weeks since that game, but it's still something which has left a sour taste in my mouth, and I can still feel that taste. The Brighton one that must have hurt, because you're right. I mean, in terms of the game, it's harsh to say that Brighton didn't deserve a point at least, but when you're 2-1 up. And you are Liverpool. I mean, you're a team obviously that is looking to win the league, so you'd expect them to have enough about them. And as I said, I still sort of maintain that was poor from Robertson. It was a very poor goal to give. I mean, that's my thoughts. But
give the poor man a rest. I mean, he's just injured his shoulder. He's going to have surgery. I mean, let's go easy on him.
but you. I mean, I don't know. As I said, I may be being much too harsh on Andy Robertson, but I'm going to maintain that unless somebody sort of gives me a convincing argument otherwise. I thought it was weak, and not what you expect from a Premier League defender, but a disappointing result. But this is why it's so important. I think the last two games, to get 1 point from 2 games for a team that's going for the title, it's not great. I do expect, you're right. I think Dyche is certainly not going to play expansive football. They're going to sit in the physical. They're a physical side. They've got a physical manager. So I think it's going to be perhaps a dogfight for them. Make it hard, maybe catch Liverpool, not on the break, perhaps with a set piece. But I expect Liverpool to have far too much for Everton. And I do expect a comfortable, I mean, you're probably saying it's not going to be comfortable, but I expect a comfortable win. I think if Liverpool score early, it will be comfortable, because then Everton have to come out. So I'm expecting a Liverpool win, and to be honest, really quite comfortable win at that.
Yeah, let's see. I think Liverpool will. I mean, they'll really want to get back to winning ways. If they don't, they will, even at this early stage, feel like as they're just a little bit short. It's that balance in the middle of the park where they just need to find the right situation, the right setup. Playing McAllister deep, he wants to play number 8. He's better at the number 8 position.
Yeah.
Having to play Szoboszlai in a different position, he's better in that kind of number 10 forward advanced position. Just not finding that right solution for who can play that quality defensive midfield role, but I guess that's the job of Jurgen Klopp to find those answers. The other game that I obviously want to just point out is the game at the Etihad, Manchester City against Brighton. 2 teams that I guess you could argue play the best football in the league, so to speak, or at least want to. Incredible managers, 2 incredible teams. Brighton, a very unusual team out there, Ayub, in terms of, I say unusual, what I mean is, like you said, many people have spoken about it. They've taken a few spankings this year. They look like a team that can concede. They look like a team that can get big results. And I think De Zerbi, again, deserves massive plaudits. City obviously lost all 3 games whilst Rodri was suspended. The games against Wolves, which was one of the big results, to your point about under Gary O'Neill, but obviously then losing the big game at the Emirates, and obviously losing the Carabao Cup game against Newcastle, only scoring once in those 3 games as well. So I think some of those injuries/suspensions cost City in those games. They definitely don't look like the City that we know in terms of that kind of dominant, threatening champions of Europe as everybody knows them, but they need to win. They need to get back to winning ways. I think it'll be a good game. I think Brighton will also go there, as always, to play. Roberto De Zerbi doesn't know any other way. And I think he'll also feel fairly confident that maybe there's a certain fragility right now. I think, again, that's probably a little strong, but there's clearly, I think what happens is that when you're an incredible team that's achieving unbelievable feats in terms of trebles and what have you, it takes a couple of defeats for perhaps teams to see that there are some chinks in the armor. There's certain ways to perhaps attack teams, and how do you get through them, and what have you. You saw certain things against Wolves. You saw 1 or 2 things perhaps against Arsenal that you thought, well, actually, there's they definitely weren't as threatening as they have been. Yes, a couple of injuries. I think still trying to kind of ingratiate some players into that playing style. It's a huge game. Again, should be a fascinating game. If you've got a ticket, that'll be a game well worth watching for sure. So very fascinated to see how that turns out. But I think there's a little bit of pressure on City after those two difficult results away from home against Wolves and Arsenal. How do you see that game panning out? AYub, should be a great one.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the return of Rodri, and I think that's pivotal. That's absolutely crucial. Uh, especially with Gundogan as well not being there. De Bruyne, he's always injured, or at least he's injured for large portions of the season. So, but to not have Gundogan, and then obviously Rodri is just key. He's absolutely instrumental. I think they always sort of say that sometimes when you're not playing, you realize the importance of a player. I think most people know how important Rodri is, but I think him not being there. But again, it was, if you look at the reason why he's not there, it's something that he has to take responsibility for. Guardiola, it's one where we did a piece many months ago about Guardiola, about manager, how great a manager he is, and I've always said that he's an excellent and exceptional coach, but he's a great manager of great players. I think when key parts are missing, sometimes I must confess I question whether he's as good a coach as some people are leading us to believe. I mean, that's my opinion. Obviously, there's many counter opinions. But as I said, these three games were quite crucial. Without Rodri, I wanted to see what he was going to do to try and compensate for the loss of an absolute key player. I don't think he answered. So I think tomorrow should be okay. Rodri's back. You'd expect, especially now with Rodri being back, that they'll have a little bit too much. And De Zerbi, it might be. I suppose. I mean, I won't sort of say it's a job application, but certainly he's probably every time that he plays a big team, I think those big teams will be looking at De Zerbi and saying maybe when there's a change of guard in terms of who coaches our team, maybe he's somebody that we should look at. So certainly, I think it will be interesting to see how De Zerbi sort of faces up against Guardiola. But I think with Rodri back, I can't see anything other than a Manchester City win.
Yeah, I'm expecting both teams to score. I think Brighton will get something just because they very rarely don't score. I mean, it's just the playing style that they have. They force you into a lot of difficult situations, and I think they won't mind actually playing away from home. So against a City team that will be just a little edgy, unless obviously they'll be hoping for an early goal, City, just to settle those nerves. And you mentioned obviously without De Bruyne's kind of consistency, it's his consistency in terms of not just his play, it's just his temperament. He settles the team, he calms the team, similar to what you mentioned about Gundogan, right? He gives you a good, comforting feeling that you've got a player who's played big games for club and country, being there in the biggest moments, contributing to the biggest moments. So I think just when you have one or two players missing, it just upsets the rhythm of the team. And I think if you look at that midfield that went up against Arsenal, it's not the midfield that strikes fear, right? I mean, Bernardo is a great player, but you've got Rico, Lewis, Kovacic. I mean, they're good players in itself, but it's not Manchester City level type where you say, wow, okay, it's going to be a hard day's work. So yeah, they'll want to get back to winning ways. Still obviously missing De Bruyne, still settling in a few other players like Nunes, Grealish, obviously not played much this season. Doku still settling in. So Haaland's not scored for a couple of games as well. So let's see how that pans out. But wouldn't bet against the big man getting back on the goals again.
Right. That, I think, in terms of the preview, we wanted to focus on the major games, or at least games that we thought have got quite a lot of interest or subplot. So that's our review. So is there any other games, OS, that you want to comment on, or?
No, not really. Nothing. Well, I mean, obviously there's big games everywhere, but I think we've covered I say the biggest ones. I don't want to say biggest ones, but there's obviously Spurs play Monday night home to Fulham. I'm expecting a comfortable win, but I think those are the big ones. Some talk that Nottingham Forest against Luton might get called off with this storm ongoing currently. Let's see how that develops over time. If it does go ahead, that'll be an opportunity for Luton to surprise you once more. You've no doubt.
Well, why is that though? I mean, the one thing it's something that I've heard. is the Storm only in Nottingham? That's what I'm just curious because everybody's talking about this game, and I'm sort of thinking, hang on, there's a wild storm outside as I look. So why is it that there's no other games apart from this Nottingham game? Is it because it's on the what's the river there? Is it the Trent? Is that the river? Does that make a difference?
It would be Trent Bridge with the whole Nottingham cricket test match. But no, I mean, what do I look like? A meteorologist? I mean, I'm not Michael Fish with telling you that this storm will be just passing through Nottingham from what have you, doing my best impression. No, I mean, look, I'm not sure what the reasons are. I think you'd still expect the games to go ahead, but let's see. But that'll be an interesting one. But I think we've covered most of the big ones. Newcastle, Crystal Palace, interesting to note. Eddie Howe talking about how Tonali's going to play, maybe a subject that we'll tackle some other day with a bit of controversy there. But yeah, I think we've covered most of the big ones. But it'll be really interesting to see how some of these games fare.
Fantastic. Always great to listen to your views. Thank you so much, as always.
Likewise. Hoping Leeds get a win. Hoping Leeds.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's, to be honest, really, the audience knows that I'm talking about the Premier League, but they know what I'm really sort of looking forward to. It's a Leeds win. Leeds win, everything else becomes perfect. So, as always, thank you for watching. Do the usual things. Smash a like. Share with your friends. Subscribe if you haven't. And until the next time, stay safe because it's a little bit wild out there. I am going out in about an hour's time. So I'm going to put the hat on. Make sure I've got a big coat on because otherwise I'm going to be blown all over the place. So until the next time.
A Friday night on the tiles.
I think it will be on the tiles. I think the roof tiles will be on the floor.
Yeah.
So until the next time, stay safe. See you soon.